natural stance, tension stance, and courtesy bow. Back to your natural stance. Hello everybody, and welcome to our training video on the Zenkutsu Dachi, or the forward leaning stance, also known as the front stance. It's also known as the walking stance. So depending on the style of karate that you study, your individual club, or even the country that you're in, it can go by any of those names in English, but in Japanese, it is the Zenkutsu Dachi. The Zenkutsu Dachi is one of the first stances you will be taught at the white belt level, all right? In fact, in most styles of karate, it is pretty much everywhere from white belt or yellow belt all the way up to the end, right? It goes all the way through karate. It's a stance that is rooted in balance, and it delivers a lot of power on your techniques moving forward or backwards. A couple of key points to remember about the Zenkutsu Dachi. Our stance is roughly shoulder width apart. Our stance is roughly twice as long as it is wide, but we're going to cover that in a couple of seconds, and I'm going to show you what it looks like as we move forward. Okay, so just to give you a sense, I'm going to step backwards. You'll notice that here I've got a white line running down the dojo floor, and I'm going to use this as a guide to show you from a stepping standpoint how we move in this stance. So when I say the stance is shoulder width apart, what I'm talking about is this: shoulder width based on the insides of your feet. Here are my shoulders, the insides of my feet. If I do the outsides of my feet, that creates a very narrow stance. So I want to have my stance based on the inside of my feet. Now, don't worry about my hand, but what you will notice is that my watch hand is my left hand, which is why I'm wearing it. My left foot is on the line at the moment. So from here, I'm going to step forward. Put my hands behind my back. My left foot steps forward on the line. Just like that. Now, what I'm doing here is the outside of my left foot is pointing straight, which means that my left toes are angled ever so slightly in. My back toes, big problem that people have when they're first learning the stance is that they open their back foot, which opens the back hip. This is not where we want the hip to be, because this is not conducive to driving our power and our energy forward. So we take our back foot and we turn it forward. Maybe a little bit more than 45 degrees, maybe more closer to 60 degrees, right? Back leg is straight, our front leg is bent, so that my front knee is bent over top of the middle of my front foot. I say to the kids, can you see the big toe of your front foot? And if you can, that means you're probably not bending forward enough in that knee, all right? So from here, as we step forward, we're going to step almost like a speed skater. From here, I take my back foot, I come in, and then I step out. Back foot comes in, and then it steps back out onto the line, all right? And that's how you're moving forward in this stance. Be very careful when people are learning this stance, they tend to bob up and down. They tend to step up and down like that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to take the arc of our energy and come up and then back down again. We want to take all of that energy and commit it and move forward with it. So from here, in this case going backwards, I take my front foot, I step in, and then I put it back on the line, right? I step in, and I put it back on the line. And one more time, I step in and back on the line, all right? Just like that, nice and simple. That is, in a nutshell, the forward leaning stance, okay? So I'm gonna show you a couple of different angles of this, and then you can get a real sense of what it looks like. Okay guys, so here we go. We're gonna do one more shot, moving forward and backward in Zenkutsu Dachi. This time I have my right foot on the line, and we're gonna step, okay? So hands behind the back. From here, looking forward, I step forward, front leg is bent, back leg is straight, right? I step in and out. Do not come up and down, right? Back foot comes in and out. And one more time, in and out. Okay, backwards now. Step backwards, in and out. In and out. And one more time, in and out. And then we come back up. And that is a Zenkutsu Dachi. Again, what you need to remember with the Zenkutsu Dachi, like any martial arts technique, is repetition is the mother of skill, all right? Eventually, you will be able to do it without thinking about it, and you'll be able to do it at a high degree of proficiency without thinking about it. In psychology, they call that unconscious competence, being able to do something of a high skill set without thought, okay? And that's, your aspiration for every technique in the martial arts, but considering this is one of the first ones that you will learn, right? Make this a focus. Alrighty, so thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked a couple of things up, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay guys, so here we are. We're going to actually show you a quick tip to measure the length of your stance. Now again, this is just a guideline, okay? It's not carved in stone by any stretch of the imagination. Some of this very much depends on, if you're more leg than upper body, your height, the length of your gait. So there are lots of different things that come into factor here. But again, as a guideline, this is pretty solid. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Zenkutsu Dachi. Again, front leg is bent, back leg is straight, my back toes are pointing, not completely forward, not 90 degrees, because you'll see some people trying to do this, and then they're wondering why their back heel is coming up off the ground. Both feet are rooted on the ground here, okay? Be very, very clear about that. Both feet are rooted on the ground. You do not have your back heel up off the ground. This isn't a fighting stance per se. So from here, back heel is on the ground, outside of my front foot is pointing forward. From here, I take my back knee and I drop it to the ground. So I drop my back knee to the ground. Okay, now from here, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take my fists, just like that. And I'm gonna put them on my knee. So when I do this, the top of my one fist should be roughly in line with the heel of my front foot, plus or minus a little bit, but it should be roughly on the same line, okay? That tells you that your stance is long enough. Now, if you find yourself in a position where you're this, and your fist is in line with your big toe, for example, then your stance may be a little bit too short. Or conversely, if you're off by a mile, your stance is probably way too long, because I almost fall over. Your stance is probably way too long, okay? So again, two fist length, roughly in line with your front heel and your back knee as it drops to the ground. And that's how you measure the distance, or the length, excuse me, of your Zenkutsu Dachi. Okay guys, so we've talked about the length of the stance, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the weight distribution of the stance. So in the Zenkutsu Dachi, I've always sort of taught it as 60% on the front leg, 40% on the back leg, but some people teach it as 70% on the front leg, 30% on the back leg, or somewhere thereabouts in between. From a ratio standpoint, that's pretty much what you're looking for, 60 to 70%, on the front leg. And again, some of that has to do with your body type, your height, the length of your legs and things like that. They may come into play on something along those lines, right? And the style of karate that you study may have an impact on that as well, okay? So from a weight distribution standpoint, again, 60 to 70% is on the front leg, and the remaining is on the back leg. Again, back leg straight and your front leg is bent.